So this week on The Walking Dead, episode 510, the episode was entitled Them. Two guest actors on this episode, of course, we had Tyler James Williams as Noah, and then showing up at the end, we had Russ Marquand as Aaron. Aaron, were you upset that you didn't get the call?
I'm still a little annoyed that I wasn't chosen for some other characters. I mean, there's a lot of...
Specifically Rosita.
Rosita, yeah, I feel like I could have made a good Abraham if I really bulked up and grew a mustache, but whatever. I mean, the show does what it does.
Actually, just never put that together. There's now an Abe and an Aaron on the show.
You know, yeah.
That's pretty darn cool if they can only have a movie discussion at some point.
Who knows, right?
Well, let's get into the plot. Well, before we get into the plot of the episode, after last week's very divisive episode, which, Rich, we never got to hear what your thoughts on. So what did you think of last week's episode?
I liked it. It didn't wow me like I was expecting it to. It just kind of moved along and just kept repeating itself throughout the entire episode. It was cool that they did this whole artistic approach. I just think that they wasted some time on the death of a character that I was quite frankly happy to see go, which is sad because he's one of my favorite characters in the comics, but he never became the character. And we would get these teases that Tyrese was going to become the comic Tyrese in a way. There'd be like this moment where it's like, okay, it's fixing to switch the badass on, and then his cycle syncs up with Maggie and them, and he's just a wuss. I understand he has his morals he lives by, his code, he doesn't want to kill or whatever, but this ain't the world for that, which is the whole point of why he needed to go, because he isn't made for this world. But I'm just upset that we never got to see the Tyrese that I was hoping to see.
Well, for the most part, this week's episode was much more of a return to standard Walking Dead, maybe a bit slower and stranger than the average episode, at least towards the end, but this was much more normal, I would say, right? Until the Close Encounters moment starts up.
This episode, it's the first time something's happened on The Walking Dead ever, for me anyway, and that is I fell asleep watching the episode.
Wow. I'm going to assume in the first half.
I literally fell asleep. I woke up. I fell asleep like for 2 seconds, and I'm like, when are they getting to the point? I mean, I understood through the whole thing, the whole telegraphing of they've reached their wits' end, they're not, the future is uncertain, they're all sad about the people they've lost and all these other things, but there was nothing really said or portrayed through that entire episode up until we meet Aaron that we didn't already know as watchers and readers and whatnot. We know they're in despair. We know they're on their last leg. We know that, times are tough. We know that, they keep losing people left and right. Did we need an entire episode of watching them shuffle about like the Walking Dead themselves? And that's another thing. And I know we had that moment in the comic where Rick actually refers to them as the Walking Dead.
Which is much different than it is here.
Which is much different. But the other problem I have there is that's just like when you're watching a movie and somebody says the title of the movie in some soliloquy they're given or something like that. It's like, come on, really? That to me is one of the cheesiest things you can do.
Well, the funny thing is right after that, then Daryl does say the title of the episode, and it came off as much less cheesy.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't know. To me, this was probably the worst episode of The Walking Dead that I've seen yet in 5 seasons. I think
you have a very short memory, sir.
What do you mean?
I mean, if you think back to the farmhouse and some of those episodes in like season 1.
I would prefer some of the season 2, where is Sophie? Let's go hang out on Old McDonald's farm. I would prefer that over what happened in this episode, which is really nothing. I mean, this episode, there was no new revelation. The only thing that was mildly interesting was suddenly this water appeared from nowhere, and then when we meet Aaron,
that's called rain.
I'm talking about the water in the road from a friend. I really was disappointed with this episode. I really thought, at least they're getting a little artsy with things last week, while I felt that they could have done that a lot better than they did as far as wrapping up that part of Tyrese, his storyline. I thought, well, at least they're trying to do something different. And this was just, I felt like we had no plot to this other than, wow, we're aimlessly wandering the road, eating worms and dog. I mean...
I would, to jump in, I would go just last season to find the worst episodes of the series because, everyone knows I'm not a fan of bearded governor walking around lazy bones doing whatever he wants to and then encountering people. I have no real care for any of that. But as far as this episode goes, I like this episode overall. It's not like a top episode of Walking Dead, but it's still a fine episode, I think, given who we're focused on and what we have to deal with. The problem is it's covered ground that we've covered a lot before, but it's also hard to not it's hard to not have an episode like this because people did die and people have to deal with that. And I thought we were kind of going to get past that last week when we had a time jump ahead of the whole Beth death into let's go on a trip to Noah's old town. But here we are now where we have to deal with both deaths that took place in recent episodes. And
well, all three.
What's the third? Am I not thinking of?
Bob Stuckey.
We already dealt with Bob. Sasha lost her brother. That's what she's feeling about now. But sure, yeah, people died. And so this is the episode that really kind of closes off the whole, hey, people died, people are feeling bad about it. And yeah, it's hard to see it past that. That's the issue. That's the issue I find myself with. And I guess, the only thing I can really say is I just wish the script was better. I mean, that's a constant thing that I said about the show. But if I'm going to deal with the same exact thing again, I'm happy that I got to deal with, Daryl does his thing because Daryl's good at what he does, and Lauren Cohan, she hasn't
Does he
been
need to be super emo now, though? Does he have to be so un-Daryl?
Daryl's been super emo the entire series. That's
not like
standing Daryl.
Not like this, though.
Well, shall we get into the actual plot synopsis of the episode, gentlemen?
Yeah, sure.
Well, there would need to be a plot to synopsis.
Well, Wikipedia has a whole section on it, so I'm going to go with them. So, as we've already said, the group's still dealing with the losses of Beth, Tyrese, and Bob, and they're making their way towards DC. The trip has not gone very well for them. They're about 60 miles out from DC at this point, if I recall the episode correctly. But their vehicles have all broken down. They have no water. They have no food left, and they are all exhausted.
I think they're 60 miles away from Atlanta or something like that. They're not that far. They're not that close to DC.
No, they're 60 miles from DC because last week Michonne said it's only 100 more miles. Let's go ahead and go. Eugene might have had a good idea out of his lie.
I'm so confused by the geography then of the show based on last week's episode.
They were 500 miles away from Atlanta.
All of them?
As of last week, they were 500 miles away from where they'd started. I don't know exactly how far. Well, I guess they were coming from the hospital, so yeah, from Atlanta. And they were 100 miles away from DC. And at least according to, I forget if it was Sasha or Maggie who said it, they were 60 miles outside of DC at this point.
Didn't Noah mention at one point the episode before that, hey, his community was like not too far outside of Richmond? Not Richmond, but Richmond.
It was definitely in Virginia, for sure. So you're not going to be that far away.
Well, I'm just saying, if they're in the Richmond area, that's about 100 miles from DC. So
this is definitely the thing I don't want to focus on because it matters so little.
Right.
You're
an amateur car pilot, for your
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to brag about it. I'm also, I had a minor in underwater basket weaving. I don't get that.
I mean, clearly the blue part here is land.
But thank you, Buster. But
hey, buddy.
The things I'm focusing on are both. I have no idea what the miles in between each state is on the East Coast because I'm a West Coaster. But at the same time, all I remember distinctly seeing the South Carolina sign last week in the episode too. I'm so confused by where everybody is. I guess. Although everyone was bitching and moaning about last season when everyone was on the train tracks to Terminus, and I had no problem with that. So whatever. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's not so much the wandering. There could have been some moments because there were some good scenes in this episode.
There were some really good moments.
I just
feel along by a lot of nothing.
That there needed to be a little more action. I mean, yeah, we don't want The Walking Dead to always be action, but break it up a little bit. I mean, first of all, well, we'll get into it. Go ahead and start, Jordan.
Is there more action this week than last week? I'm trying to think.
I would argue yes.
I guess
There's
it's
definitely more
not as
action
stylish,
scenes.
I guess, as last week's episode because of the slow motion scene and stuff like
Right.
Well, this had an alien abduction, kind of. So on the road, one of the first things that happens is Carl gives Maggie a music box he found, which doesn't work, but he thought of her for some reason. I don't remember if that's a callback to something. I can't remember any particular ballerina or music box references with Maggie, but maybe music, Beth, maybe that's a connection.
that. Kids do the darndest things.
And Father Gabriel tries to console Maggie with some religious talk. You understand religion because her dad was, very religious, and he tries to bond with her on that, and she shuts him down very quickly.
An understatement. He was very religious.
Yes. But yeah, she shuts him down very quickly and tells him off because he, abandoned his flock and locked him out of the church. So he doesn't get to come back from that, in her eyes, at least at this point. And they're being followed by a decent-sized group of walkers down the road, and they just keep pushing on because they're exhausted and don't want to have to deal with them. Sasha wants to take them out, but Michonne advises her not to, saying, hey, Tyrese did the same thing after Karen died, and he almost died. So, bad plan. And she reports that she's not like her brother, although, as we'll see in this episode, she definitely has some similarities to her brother in how she handles her grief.
It would be nice to see some hammer time from Sasha.
So, Rick orchestrates a plan to eliminate the walkers by throwing them off the end of a bridge, kind of down the embankment, which I thought was a very cool plan, actually.
Actually, this is one of my first problems with this episode. Okay. There's a point somewhere in the episode where Maggie opens the trunk and there's that walker in there.
That's after this, I think.
Right. But my point is that, and there's been many times on this show that they've just killed off zombies to put them out of their misery, even though we don't know the exactly how conscious a zombie is, but or cognizant of what's going on around them. But the whole point is they kill them. The other part of this is it gives me the whole Uncle Ben, Peter Parker letting the guy run out and then he kills Uncle Ben type thing. Every walker that you have a chance to off and don't is a walker that could eventually come back to bite you.
Wait, so where's the problem? Where are we getting to?
So instead, let's line up in these ways and we'll just take turns making them go off the edge of this bridge. Just kill them. I mean, it wasn't like they were like super fast or anything. It wouldn't have been that much work had they done that. Instead, they're exhausting.
It clearly was that much work. But look at what Sasha interrupting the plan they had of just casually dispatching them led to near deaths for almost all the characters. I mean, Rick almost got bit in the arm because they had to deal with this strong zombie coming after him.
But had they used that same strategy they were using, and then as they lured them to the side, actually, stab them in the back of the head or something like that, and then let them fall off the side, you've taken care of the problem, and that problem's not going to return.
Yeah, but you're delving into like logic of the world, where the episode's not about that. It's about getting some themes across and having cinematic purpose. I mean, yes, kill every walker you can if you want, but I mean, the episode's trying to emphasize, hey, these guys are really tired, and this is how they have to deal with this, and then someone upsets that balance and they have to deal with it a different way. I mean, it defies what the script's trying to do to inject logic of we need to kill zombies every step of the way in order to appease the idea of zombies need to go away. I mean,
I'm not saying every step of the way, but if you're going to put in the effort to do away with these zombies to get them off of your case, why not do it the right way?
Well, I have two rebuttals to this, Rich.
Okay.
One, they're at such the end of the ropes in terms of just calories alone. Just sidestepping and letting a zombie fall to its death is way less calories, way less expended energy, expended water, and all that kind of stuff than taking the time to use the muscles to stab them through the head or try to and maybe fail and then you're screwed. So those calories they save by not doing that could literally be the difference between life and death. But beyond that, I mean, we don't really see the bottom of the embankment, but the impression I was getting was that if those zombies weren't completely killed by falling down that ravine, they were at least broken enough to the point that they weren't going to be coming back.
They're immobilized.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I might give you that, but as far as the expending of the calories, doing the musical zombies thing expends calories too. I don't.
But barely.
I mean, it's a dumb point to argue. I mean, I understand. I just couldn't understand how that was more sensical of a plan than just luring them one at a time and chopping their head off.
When Michonne says she's tired, I'm pretty sure the rest of the group is also tired.
Well, I'll give you that. Yeah.
I mean, if Michonne's not taking out the sword to take out zombie heads, everybody else is way more tired than her.
So like Rich already said, Sasha breaks rank and starts taking out zombies Tyrese style, and this causes everything to kind of fall apart, and a bunch of people almost die, including Rick. But they get the situation back under control, and Michonne chews out Sasha for her recklessness, and again warns her, you don't want to end up like your brother.
You get even a quick, and I know because people want to nitpick or whatnot, you get a quick Sasha accidentally cuts Abraham in the midst of her slaughter, and people are like, "What? He get infected now because he got hit by her sword covered or her knife that's covered in little zombie guts and whatnot." I think it was more just Abraham's like, "Hey, don't cut me, please." That kind of protection.
Yo, bro, don't case me.
Tis but a flesh wound.
As they continue along down the road, Maggie's investigating a car, and this is where, like Rich also pointed out, she finds a bound and gag zombie in a trunk, and Glenn eventually comes along and helps her kill it because it reminds her of Beth. It's clearly intended to. It's a blonde, slight-framed female. And I think it's pretty clear that this was, again, like we kind of mentioned a bunch of times last week, probably was not a zombie when it was put in that trunk, which is really messed up.
I think there's multiple ways to take that. I think one is something very horrible happened and that has nothing to do with zombies whatsoever. Someone was kidnapped, or someone was just bit, and given the early stages of the zombie plague taking place, they didn't know what to do beyond just well, we should keep her, but let's put her in the trunk so she doesn't hurt anybody. I don't sentimentality of not wanting to let go of this person, but still knowing wise enough to not want it to be in the car with you. I just think there's multiple ways to read it.
Fair enough, I guess. That's still pretty messed up.
Well,
it's messed up.
Go.
Sorry.
What I want is I'd like to see Greg Nicotero do a 6-part webisode series this summer of the story of how she got in that trunk. That would be cool.
I mean, honestly, there are probably some pretty cool stories that could be told about that.
I think there's a lot of stories about a lot of things that we encounter in this world. I mean, that's part of what intrigues me about a spin-off, because even though it's not going to necessarily involve the stuff we've been dealing with season the Prime Walking Dead series, there are other things where you could delve into that more. Like we talked last week. I think we referenced the whole when the governor was walking around, he saw those signs that had those words on them. I mean, you can do a whole episode series about just that scene, or you can do a webisode series about this person got in the trunk, or how random people wind up in certain situations. There's a lot. I mean, that's what the early ones were. I mean, that's what those were. They connected to the series Prime in their own way. So I mean, yes, there's lots of potential because I mean, it's something why I like an episode like this, or just the show in general, is that regardless of how strong it is story-wise, the world building is always really good, and it leaves you thinking, hey, I would like to know more about how this person got in this situation.
So the group takes a rest, and that's when a pack of wild dogs show up, and it's very tense for a moment until Sasha shoots them all, and they eat them. And this is what causes Father Gabriel to lose enough of his faith to throw his priest collar in the fire. Nothing the day before that, it was eating dogs.
Where do you think these dogs came from? You think Aaron released them? See what they do?
Why would you do that, Aaron? I think dogs are pack animals. I wouldn't be surprised that post-domestication they might return to that.
And I don't know if it's just the way it was filmed. It just seemed like really, because there's a lot of convenience to say the least in this episode. I think it's just like the way it just happened was very odd to me, just strangely filmed. Of the things that I saw in this episode, that was one where I was like, where do these dogs come from? That's such a weird development.
I mean, big picture, and it bothers me to even say this, but you did, like you said, a lot of things just kind of happened in this episode, and it felt like this was a, hey, you're starving, here's some food from the universe.
I think
which is really dumb as far as I'm concerned, but
yes.
That's what it felt like.
I'd be okay with it if, like, in future episodes we suddenly find out that there was a reason for those dogs being in that area, but yeah, it was a little just too convenient and shoehorned in there. on top of that too is there's no other animals around. Something has, it looked like some kind of a plague or something was killing off animals.
Well, it's a drop. There's no water.
That's part of it too, Rich. Actually, you're getting to it where it's like, where did these dogs come from? Like everything.
Yeah.
It seemed more like I can understand the water thing, and I like the kind of the undercurrent of a divine intervention, or whatever you want to call it, in terms of how things develop in this episode. And I can see how the dogs factor into that as well. But it's just that one seemed like the most strangely placed in here between the other things that do take place later in this episode, which are also strange. Yes, that's to say the least, in terms of like giant storms that happen and water appearing and stuff like that. But it's just like something about just the way it was filmed, because I haven't really thought about it until discussing it just now. That it stands out more to me as awkward as opposed to the other things which fit thematically with what the episode's trying to do.
Well, the awkward part too is that so many of them seem squeamish about eating dog meat, and I'm thinking, you guys have seen your friends and family die in the most horrific ways in front of you. You've been in a place where you were almost dinner. Just the effed up things that they've gone through. Eating dog should not be something that's so terrible to them. You could see it in a lot of their facial reaction when they were eating the meat. I mean, I'll tell you, I've had dog before, not willingly. I found out after the fact.
These aren't steak burgers.
Well, there's just certain places in Mexico you need to double check what they're butchering before you eat. But anyway,
It's just a dog. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love dogs as a
Yeah.
pet, but it's just a smaller cow.
Write in your thoughts on dog meat over at wdtvpodcast@gmail.com.
I mean, if I'm starving to death and I have a dog come along, it's roast puppy. Rex is going in the fire. That's all there is to it. I'm gonna make a good little gravy out of him and have some Salisbury Fido.
So we're speaking on this now a little bit much, so now I have to say something. I honestly didn't see too much of a regret of having to eat the dogs. I just felt more of like this is a shitty day kind of thing, as opposed to
Well, maybe that's what it was. I just took it as they were not happy about eating dog.
So Carol tries to comfort a little bit Daryl because he's still grieving about Beth, but he's not really interested in the comfort, and so he goes off in the woods. And throughout the episode, he's going off into the woods by himself, eating worms and stuff like that. But this time, we follow him off into the woods, and we see him sit down kind of by a tree and smoke some of his Morley cigarettes, and then self-flagellate and burn himself with one of the cigarettes with a barn off in the distance, which I thought was a little weird. He wasn't going to investigate it, but at least it comes back later.
Yeah, it is where we get. I mean, this would be the emo scene of choice, I'd say, for Norman Reedus. I mean, he's literally burning himself to feel something. And I mean, it's neat that when the show decides to like make Daryl emotional, because there's there's obviously an audience that wants to see Daryl and wants to see him be all he can be and everything like that. And it's neat to watch the kind of balancing act it does to show that he is he's the guy you want to be rooting for. He's your hero for so many fans, but at the same time you need to show him emoting. And Norman Reedus, he's very good on the show. I mean, that's something that's always stuck for me. I mean, he's doing a great job here. But he also given the situation he's in, where now he's lost one of the few people he has a connection with still, which I mean, being a very troubled individual as he is, who's lost his brother who was abusive to him but still loved, and now he's lost Beth, who he obviously has a deep connection with. I mean, just thank God Daryl hasn't died. He'd probably off himself at this point.
And don't forget Sophia.
And Sophia. I mean, he's lost a lot here. Like, as opposed to many of the other characters that speak out loud in very functional dialogue that doesn't really add much beyond what we already knew, that are now hearing in word form. Norman Reedus has given a good job of not having to say much, but doing plenty on screen, even if it's very obvious, like burning yourself, which I appreciate.
So Daryl comes back to the group and finds them standing around a group of water bottles. We got some gallon jugs, we got some liter bottles, and there's a note that says they're from a friend, and they're not sure exactly what to do. They could be poisoned, it could be some kind of weird trap. And Eugene decides to throw himself on the grenade, and he grabs one of the bottles and says quality control, and is about to drink it, but Abe slaps it out of his hand.
He said quality assurance because I got that question wrong on Talking Dead.
What did I say, quality control?
Yeah.
I only have that in my head because of what the other options on the quiz were. I knew the right answer. But...
I was confused when the scene first started because I think didn't they come back from commercial or something right then? Or there was
I
a
think he comes back to commercial with the group, and then Daryl shows up.
Because maybe I missed it in the very beginning of the scene, but I didn't see the water. And when he's showing that note, I'm like, did my DVR cut something off, or what's going on? And then it comes back around and you see the water. I'm like, oh, okay, but did they show that in the beginning? Because I was really confused. What is this note he's showing him?
I believe we got the note first. I honestly didn't watch this one as much as I normally do because I had things going on, but I got the
There wasn't a lot to miss with this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of why I was like, I'm just gonna write this, and I know what I got. But something about the scene though of Eugene and Abraham, I think there's multiple ways to read this too, not necessarily all true. I think there's ways to read it because I do think there's one where Abraham, he might be angry and stubborn enough to be hostile towards Eugene, but he's also not gonna let him die because he cares about another person. But at the same time, there could be this whole like, hey, we're all suffering, you're not going out, so you're sticking around with us kind of mentality too, to the idea.
He's also been drinking. It's probably
which is why I think there's multiple ways to read it, because you don't know what kind of frame of mind he is necessarily.
Which they kept trumpeting the whole, it's dehydrating. It's not dehydrating. It's not as hydrating as water, but there's still water in there. It's better for you than nothing to drink alcohol if you are, if you are literally dying of thirst.
I don't think they emphasize the dehydration as much as it's going to
They
make
mentioned it like 3 times.
I think it was more of the frame of mind he might be in because he's drinking.
It's the bad side that bothers me more than anything else. It's like that whole, we only use 10% of our brains thing.
Alcohol will dry you out quickly, though.
It does,
There's still water in there. It's better than
right, but you're going to burn that water out with the alcohol. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a reason you see those old 50s TV shows with the town drunk Otis walking down the street. I'm dry, I am. There's a reason they're dry. It's because
you're getting your science from Mayberry.
Damn right, damn right.
So right at the moment that Abraham knocks the bottle of water out of Eugene's hands, the skies open up and rain begins to pour. The group rejoices. They start catching water in their mouth, trying to grab as much water as they can. And of course, Gabriel takes this moment to take this as a sign from God and apologize for burning his collar earlier, and just in general.
And this is a divine intervention moment, just like the dogs.
Or water.
But for some reason, this one worked for me, whereas the dogs felt shoehorned in.
I agree.
Is that because Rick had said earlier it'll rain eventually? Do you think? Is it just that enough amount of foreshadowing?
No,
it just I bought it more than I did just this random pack of dogs showing up in the middle of where there's not even squirrels right now.
I feel like just the tone of the show, the way the series has conducted itself, it somehow, despite all the odds and weird allowances you're gonna have to go for when it comes to something like this, it worked for me. Whereas again, I just feel like there's something about just the way it was filmed. I guess the only way that I explain it, where the dogs just didn't work for me in terms of like a random but fitting thing to occur. Where the rain thing, given the nature of this episode and how it was clearly trying to go for symbolism in a lot of ways, and it just matched up in this instance.
So the group takes shelter in that barn that Daryl had seen when he was self-flagellating, and inside they try mostly unsuccessfully to get a fire going because everything's soaking wet. And Rick tells the group the story of his grandfather who fought in World War II and only survived by convincing himself that he was already a dead man, and that every day he woke up it was basically a gift, that kind of thing.
I said in my show notes that I'd love to visit the whole podcast of Rick telling grandfather's word stories.
I thought too, actually. That was pretty good.
I actually really enjoyed this scene. The only thing I didn't enjoy was him, using the title of the show, but the actual storytelling and the point he was getting across and the way the whole thing thing was shot. That's probably my favorite scene of this whole episode, or really the only scene that I just really enjoyed.
Yeah, I thought it was a good speech. I agree with you that the tacking on, because even like during the speech, I was like, oh, it's a good speech. It feels like they're leaning towards We Are the Walking Dead way later than it happened in the book, which is the timing doesn't bother me. And then the delivery of the line, I was kind of 50-50 on. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, but you know, it is what it is. And I thought that the rest of the speech was very good. So yes, like at the end of the speech, he says, "We are the Walking Dead," and Daryl calls him out on it, and then Rick kind of steps back from it, and then Daryl decides to go sulk over in the corner and maybe go out and do something outside. And when he goes to the door, he sees that in the midst of the torrential downpour, that there's a whole horde of zombies coming for the barn, and so he starts holding the door. And I forget who sees him first, might have been Maggie, but she runs over and helps. Eventually, pretty much everybody is over there helping.
It's the main crew. It's Maggie and Sasha that see it first before everybody else joins in because they're the ones that were watching the most in this episode.
And the winds kick up, the thunder and lightning. There's bright blue lights. It definitely felt like they got Close Encounters and Walking Dead, and it's crazy. And then Carl leaves Judith over on her back by herself as he goes to help as well. And then we cut to morning, and I was like, wait, was that all just a weird dream, or what just happened here exactly? And then we don't find out for another 5 minutes, which was really weird.
It was extremely weird. And on top of that, can Daryl or none of them, are their voice, did they go hoarse? I mean, why didn't Daryl say, "Hey, help"? Or at least when Maggie and Sasha got over there, one of them going, "Hey," to the other ones, just waiting for them to randomly look up and go, "Oh."
The only thing I could guess based on that was that the zombies had not really seen him. They were just a bunch of them out there, and in the rain, it's not like they're going to smell them, so maybe they didn't want to alert them with noise.
I think the noise of the storm was more than enough to drown out whatever voice.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's things to get back to on this side. One, I really liked the reveal of that horde. I thought that was a really good, like, kind of scare moment for the episode. I thought it did a really good job. I thought that was really well filmed, and just communicating that just by like the doors kind of perch open, you just see, you know, there's a ton of them out there. In regard to the way the scene was kind of filmed and like why everyone's not yelling, because I was also like, why aren't they? Like, it was just kind of weird. It's like it's not everyone's asleep, but like all sitting around the campfire still very wide awake. It's like, why is this not more of a thing? But what it comes down to for me and for what this episode's doing is, again, it's a very symbolism heavy episode. It's one that's very much emphasizing, as much as I don't like a lot of the dialogue of this episode, in terms of kind of how it's shot. It really wants to drive home the notion of things happening for certain reasons and that kind of stuff. And this like really wants to emphasize like we're part of this pack, this family, this team, and one by one everyone joins in and they work together to solve this problem. So it goes beyond having dialogue, communicating. I just wants to show you like it's not as arty as last week, but I do think it's trying to kind of be very symbolic in terms of how it goes about achieving what it wants to do thematically. That's how I read it, which is, I mean, that leads into why the cabin is still standing the next day as well. It's like, look at what we did together as a team of alive humans working together while this pack of zombies get demolished by a bunch of rainwater outside.
So it's morning. Everybody, as far as we can see, is just fine. Daryl is kind of keeping watch inside, and Maggie wakes up and she goes over and talks to him, and he tells her he fixed her little music box with the ballerina, and she tells him to go get some sleep, and she goes and wakes up Sasha, and the two of them go outside. Eventually, again, it takes several minutes to reveal like what happened. I mean, theoretically, the characters all know, but they go out to actually see the damage, and they go outside, and it's revealed to us that in the night, the smoke monster from Lost came and killed all the zombies. And by that I mean a tornado or gale force winds or something, ripped up a bunch of trees, and basically just destroyed everything surrounding the barn except for the barn.
I do agree that it was a little confused, or not confused, but a little, I think it was deliberately misleading as to whether
Protracted?
protracted and a little bit deliberately misleading about whether or not it was a dream and the way it kind of reveals like Maggie, at least first face you see, and it kind of pans out. The second, like I saw everybody on the ground sleeping, I'm like, okay, this happens. But yeah, there was like a bit of like, was that real? Did that happen? But, yeah.
I don't know. I felt kind of. I wasn't sure. Was there a bad edit job there? Did they try to come up with a happy accident with misleading, or was it on purpose? And living in Tornado Alley, I'll tell you that as close as that, I don't know. I just didn't buy the whole thing. Plus, all these trees from this tornado just impaled all these zombies just right. You know, I don't know. It just seemed a little bit. You know, in a show about the zombie apocalypse, it even felt a bit far fetched.
I can say this because I think I've been saying this all along in terms of my interpretation of the episode. But this is an episode that is not really about functioning and yes, I understand it's a zombie show, so obviously it's not the real world. But it's not an episode that's like functioning in terms of real world logic. It's very much hitting you with what everything means visually speaking, without considering how things are happening, but just that they are happening, and it wants you to take it that way. I do think it is trying to be more, it's focused on grief, it's focused on kind of the spirituality, given the use of having what's his name, Seth Gilliam around. I mean, it really wants to dive into the theological realm when it comes to The Walking Dead, where everyone's mind's at in that regard. Not that it's like preaching anything, but at the same time, it's beyond just like this is what you could have done in a real world scenario. It just wants to say like, yeah, it's a grounded show to an extent, but here's this week, like, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, and I see it exactly what you're saying is that's what their intent was. I just felt it was poorly executed.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I'm not saying it's a great episode either. I get that. I understand.
Because there, like I said earlier, there are moments in this that it's like, wow, that was a fantastic scene. Too bad it's in this waste of an episode. You know, I think what it was is there were a lot of good scenes and just peppered in with a lot of bad scenes, and none of it had very good connective tissue to me. Although on a meta level, I could see where they were trying to connect that tissue, and so I understand what they were trying to accomplish. I just feel they did a poor job of it.
So Sasha, Maggie, and the music box head out to side and to survey the damage, but also to watch the sun come up. And
wait, Sasha and Maggie are playing at the music box this Friday? Is that what you said?
Not exactly. Sure, why not? And they sit down, and Maggie tries to get the music box working, and it doesn't. And at that moment, they're approached by a man named Aaron, who identifies himself as the friend that left the water bottles earlier, and wishes to speak to the leader. He says, I think his name is Rick. And Maggie and Sasha are surprised, distressed, and a little freaked out that he even knows Rick's name, and that Rick is the leader. And then the music box starts to play, and the episode ends. So the question is, Aaron, are you a friend or a foe?
Maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but don't things for sure. Stranger danger, right?
I mean, I have a pretty good idea. I'm sure you do as well. But do we want to get into that now or at the end when we do?
No, we won't get into that now. We'll just say that.
Yeah, let's save the discussion for the end. We just have to say that Aaron is a character from the books that we're all familiar with, and I will say that regardless of whether he is friend or foe, it's a character that I'm a fan of. I enjoy the stories this character is involved in, at least in the books, assuming that this follows the same path. I also really like the stories that this character's appearance will help usher the show into. Some really interesting stuff is coming, assuming they follow the same path.
I'm surprised they didn't follow the same path, honestly.
Right.
Especially given kind of what we've seen in the past from other similar encounters. I guess you can only take it so many ways before something starts to get repetitive. So
either he's going to kill them horribly, or he's not. We'll find out. So, gentlemen, shall we give our Buster ratings for the episode?
Sure.
Aaron, go ahead.
I'll give it a 3.5. I was going to say Aaron's Busters. But, I acknowledge what Rich is saying in terms of kind of what didn't work for him in this episode. At the same time, I do like this episode overall because it has enough going on from the actors and from the way it's filmed and whatnot to make it work for me. I didn't think it was a top tier episode of The Walking Dead, and I did find it repetitive in terms of getting across the same ideas of someone died again, now we got to deal with how we're going to live the rest of our lives. But this is that kind of show, and while it wasn't necessarily the most creative script-wise and how to deal with that, I'm at least glad that it happened. I got to see some good performances from the main trio we watched, Daryl, Sasha, and Maggie, and now we're past that. We've ended that kind of arc, and now we're into another arc. So 3.5, I guess.
Again, it's hard for me to badmouth any bit of a whole episode of Walking Dead because I really love the show. But this is probably the first time that I've come close to really just again, totally get where they were going. Aaron's points make perfect sense. I just feel that they didn't get there for me. And all in all, I have to give it just a middle of the road 3. So I just, and to me, that's kind of, for me, giving it a little more than I should have, because I mean, for me to fall asleep during an episode of The Walking Dead, that's not cool.
As for me, I get what they were trying to do, and unlike Rich, I actually think they accomplished what they were trying to do with the divine intervention and the grief and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't care / disliked it. There were definitely pretty cool moments in the episode. I really liked the strategy of saving the calories and letting the zombies fall to their death instead of actually fighting them. I liked Rich's speech up until the end. I'm really excited to see Aaron there at the end. But as an episode as a whole, it just really didn't work for me, even with those 3 or 4 cool things peppered in, like the light and laser show with the alien abductions there, and some cool stuff. But just as a whole, it didn't work for me. So I'm actually going with both. I'm going 2.5 because the vast majority of the episode did literally nothing for me, or actively I disliked it. But there were some really cool things peppered in, so it's going to bring it back to an even keel 2.5.
You need to listen to the old episode where you guys rated them a little bit higher back then, season 2, and compare that to the 2.5 here if you're saying this isn't the worst episode of The Walking Dead, but you're giving this a 2.5.
I'd like to think, at least as a reviewer, that I'm rating the show not based on all television, but I'm rating the show based on what I know the show can do. And what I know the show can do now in season 5 is a lot different than what the show had shown me it could do in seasons 1 or 2 or 3. And so my grading scale is going to reflect that, even if an episode I might have given a higher score in season 2, I would say now is not as good as an episode in this season. You know what I mean?
If you hear that, listeners, that was me goading Jordan into giving a very perfect response to my question there.
Well, thank you.
I forgot completely to point this out, but the reason I wasn't a huge fan on Rick saying we're The Walking Dead, the way that kind of came out here, especially since it wasn't really as epic as the comic makes that we've seen, is because the shot of like the whole group walking down the street with the other walkers kind of trailing behind them, that says we're The Walking Dead right there. So I don't need a character to say the words we're The Walking Dead when you have an amazing shot of them doing just that.
Amen. Well, before we get into our listeners thought of the episode, Rich, why don't you tell those same listeners about our sponsor?
Well, this episode of The Walking Dead TV podcast is brought to you by Discount Comic Book Service, DCBSservice.com.
Or just DCB Service.
Yeah, hey, great place to go. You're going to buy comics anyway. More than likely, if you're listening to this podcast, you're a comic buyer and a comic reader. And if you're not, you need to be a comic buyer and a comic reader. But why spend so much money going down to an LCS to get your comics when you can have them delivered to your doorstep?
For those not to know, an LCS is a local comic book shop.
Right to you for sometimes 30, 40, even in some cases 50% off the cover price. You get to order stuff a couple months in advance. It's like getting a surprise Christmas present from your grandma. You come
Except
home,
not socks, usually.
You come home and there's this box, and you forget it's a gift you sent to yourself because you ordered it 3 months ago. But you get such great stuff, everything from comics to figures to other toys, statues. If it's comic book related, you can get it there, and generally at a very, very well discounted price. Which all that means is if you have a $40 a week comic book budget, now you can get $80 approximately worth of comics for your same budget.
Which is awesome. Also check out their sister site, In Stock Trades, like trade paperbacks and hardcovers, the collected editions of comics at equally great prices as DCBService.com.
Yes.
And we thank them for the patronage. So, Aaron, what did our listeners think of this week's episode of The Walking Dead?
Well, Jordan, our listeners over at Facebook.com/groups/WTP podcast. I mean, you can find The Walking Dead TV podcast on Facebook search, and you can join that. And we had our listeners, of course, writing their own Buster or whatever ratings for this week's episode. Susan Monk writes 4.25 doggy dinners out of 5 as a smug comic book reader. Let me also say that I'm thrilled to see Aaron. He must have been the friend who left the water. Sheila says 4.0 bottles of water. Pamela says 4. A little slow at times, but I like seeing where everyone in the group is mentally and emotionally. Also, I'm really happy they finally introduced Aaron. It makes me really excited to see the rest of the season and where I know they'll be going based on the comics. I'm assuming that's the storyline. Jeff Rhodes, much better. 4 out of 5 on the Fiji scale. Great info on the morale of the group. Looks like Abraham's forgiven Eugene. I would have let him be the guinea pig on that water just enough teaser for next week. Brent Jones says 3.75 worm. The other white meat out of 5. We needed a slow episode to set the table for the rest of the year. Shalem says 4 wet t-shirts out of 5. I thought Sasha cut Abraham's arm with the zombie brains infected knife. That would suck. Friend guy seems like a Ben Linus Sloth character. Mike Jones, 2 bottle episodes out of 5. Aside from the last minute leading us into next week, this was a snooze. Did they not gather supplies before leaving the housing project? Did the tornado kill the walkers but not harm the barn? Next week we really good at least.
2 things on that. One, not a bottle episode in the least. In fact, neither was last week's episode. Bottle episode has a very specific definition. That's not it. And also, no, we saw them run in terror from the zombies that were attacking them at the housing development last week. So no, they didn't get any supplies there.
He was making a pun with the bottle thing, but I get it.
I guess.
Craig, 3 plotless episodes out of 5. It would have been a 2.5 if it wasn't for Rick's speech. Instead of endlessly walking the train tracks from last year, we are now endlessly walking the road. Come on, Mr. Gimple, I know you're all about developing the characters, but the characters have to be doing something interesting besides acting all pouty face. Oh, and did I mention how much I missed the governor after seeing him last week? They could have done so much more with him. Trisha says 3 sitting around the old campfires out of 5. I guess we need to know about their feelies, but it was so slow that I spent the time wondering if Rick's beard was fake and what were all those thin straps on Maggie's back. Hope next week's episode holds my attention a little better. Zzz, snore. The Rick's beard thing, by the way, when the rain hit, guys, I thought I thought it'd be hilarious if Rick's beard just suddenly wash off from the rain. It's like, oh, thank God. Anyway.
Is it a fake beard? I thought he grew the beard for this season.
I'm sure he did. Like that.
And at least some of it, I think it is fake because in recent photos from him, even like 6 months ago, he is clean shaven. And just no spoilers, but story-wise, they're heading to a story where might make sense for him to have a chance to shave the beard. So I have a feeling some of these might have been shot a little bit out of order. I didn't think it looked fake all the time. But there were a couple shots where I was like pretty sure that's not real.
I think Andrew Lincoln is a good enough actor where he can just close his eyes and think really hard, and then the beard disappears on his face. I think exactly.
The Swanson technique.
Exactly. The Swanson technique. Exactly. Everard Tentoria has 3.5 zombie crushing but barn sparing acts of God out of 5. Another bleak episode after last week's bleak house. Really disappointed Rick's Walking Deadline was tossed off like that. I remember being seminal moment in the comic. Chris, I give it 3 Daryl Dixon tears. Only the tears of Daryl Dixon can create hurricane force rain and winds. Max says 3.5. 3.5 war stories out of 5. It was a fine episode, just nothing to write home about. Hezron says 2.75 real men do cry out of 5. I dozed off a few times. The episode dragged. The dialogue was kind of dry. I get what they're trying to convey, but sometimes it's clumsy. I agree. Roger says 3 whole lot of nothings. I understand I need to convey the mood of the crew as they struggle to find food, water, shelter, but this episode was a struggle to get through. Maybe my negativity was because I watched it a couple hours later than I normally do. But then again, I wasn't a big fan of last week's episode either. Belinda gave last week a 1. I have to give last night a 2.5 kidnap blondes out of 5. I need some closure. I needed some closure from Maggie at least. It was unreal the way they all just woke up after the tornado. I don't read the comics, so the clean guy is a surprise to me. Ian writes the last 30 seconds took from a 2 to a 3.5 out of 5 walking dogs. Glad the group has met a new pedigree chum. Robert writes 2.5 Deus Ex Machinas, or is it Treenas? See, lastly, Richard Chopper Cherry Charrington. I'll give this week's episode 3 Dobermans and a Jack Russell BBQ, i.e. 3.5 Busters. Seemed another slow start, but again ramped up towards the end with the walkers outside the barn in the storm scene. Nice to see Daryl showing he has a softer size. And who was the guy that appeared at the end? Can't wait for next week. So that's all the Facebook listeners that chimed in this week on their thoughts on this week's episode. You can of course follow our Facebook page here, The Walking Dead TV Podcast. Just search on Facebook, you can find it. We have lots of fun on this page. I post my written reviews each week on this page as well, and a lot of people chime in with various, thoughts and pictures and whatnot about the series. It's a lot of fun to interact with the crowd there.
And where can they find your written reviews other than the Facebook page there?
My written reviews are available at theyoungfolks.com. I write about The Walking Dead there as well as a couple other TV shows.
And they're always fun reads.
Thank you.
Those Facebook comments got me thinking. What if Norman Reedus' tears are the only thing that can cure the zombie apocalypse, the zombie virus? And they just didn't realize it, and they wasted the one time he cries.
He's cried before that on the show.
Well, he cried when Merle died, but
And he cried when Beth died, when he was carrying her
And
body.
he probably cries a lot when Carol's around regardless. It seems like he tears up anytime she's on screen with him.
Man, Daryl the Woods.
I know.
All they gotta do is find some onions.
What if Beth singing was actually the key to the whole survival and now she's dead and we'll never get to do that?
Could be.
I didn't see anybody die when she was singing with her guitar.
That's true.
We need to get Carl something to do. That was my other thought on this because I've grown to like Carl quite a bit. He's got nothing to work with so far besides hold the baby. So
Well, it's going where we think it's going.
there's a lot of stuff to do. Yes, I
He's
understand.
going to have a lot of stuff to do.
And I only
So keep an eye out for that. Hey,
I don't. Yes, I like to think that Carl has things that are coming to him just based on kind of the way we deal with certain characters and how we deal with others to kind of make up the time or however you want to structure a season. But
True.
So that's it for this week's episode. Of course, we'll get to our talk about next week's episode after the end here. But if you don't want to be spoiled about that, just listen to the outro notes here, and then we will let you know before we get into them. You can leave us a voicemail at 972-798-3830. That's 972-798-3830. Or leave us an email, wbtv@hhwlod.com. And of course, check out hhwlod.com for all of our great shows, not just the Walking Dead TV podcast, but the Lone Box of Doom, Half Hour Wasted, the Black Box, Out Now with Aaron and Abe. Aaron, what are you and Abe talking about this week?
this week we have a double going here. We have Kingsman: The Secret Service and 50 Shades of Grey. So we have a double review this week.
Not to spoil it, but just is it a good review for Kingsman?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I haven't seen it yet, and I really want to, and I'd hate to think that it's bad.
Just go see it.
Which movie had more shades of grey?
Kingsman actually.
A lot of suits.
A lot of nice suits and very morally questionable at some points.
Fair enough. And of course, think about Cranecast. Jersey Shore has a new episode that should be posting right around the same time this one does. And many other shows. DCTV podcast is all connected to Marvel Universe podcast. And of course, you can follow all of our shows at HHWLOD_network on Twitter. And so until there's no more room in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, I'm a friend. Have a good week, everybody. And next week on The Walking Dead, of course, remember, if you don't want to know anything about next week's episode, you can cut out now. But for those of you who do want to stick around to know just a little bit, we have from TVGuide.com. Next episode, Season 5, Episode 11, is entitled The Distance. And the very, very brief and non-spoilery snippet we have from TV Guide is, after a spectacular storm, Rick and the group meet a seemingly friendly person. So literally stuff you would already know if you had just watched the last 5 minutes of this episode. So now let's have a slightly spoilery, but we'll try to keep it in pretty close discussion about the character of Aaron from the comics, who was, of course, introduced in this week's episode. So if you don't want to know anything about him, and you just want to have it all revealed next week, or however much they reveal, definitely cut out now. But if you don't mind hearing a little bit about Aaron, stick around. So I believe you had a question about Aaron, Rich.
Well, I say I'm trying to remember. In the books, wasn't there someone else with him when they discovered?
When he showed up in the comics, he was by himself, or at least he revealed himself by himself. In fact, the scene we see from next week's episode in The Talking Dead was Rick and the group asking him how many people are with you,
Right.
and he pretty much tells them, doesn't matter what I tell you because you're not going to believe me.
Yep.
But it's pretty clear, he doesn't seem stupid. He seems well dressed, and a very smart, well dressed person in that universe probably wouldn't be just walking around by himself. So I think it's a pretty safe assumption to say there are people with him, even if they're not revealing themselves.
That's funny. Someone over at TV Guide had written a comment about how this is proof that at least during the zombie apocalypse, the Land's End catalog still delivers. But so he's from. Well, I don't know how far we want to go into it.
Not too far. This is the end of the episode.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
he's definitely part of another group.
Yeah.
And is that a good group? Is that a bad group? I don't think we should say, but he's certainly trying to say he's part of a good group, or at least that he's a friend, from this episode.
Right. I don't know. There's just so much I want to talk about, but we can't because.
We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we will.
Exactly.
Yeah, we will.
Well, have a good week, everybody.
Let the rain fall down, you make my dreams, let it wash away my sanity. 'Cause I wanna feel the thunder on that street. Let the rain fall down, come and free.
Record.
I am recording.
I'm recording too. Testicles 1 2 3. Testicles 1 2 3.
You should probably see a doctor if you got 3 of them.
I lost my train of thought.
Choo choo.
Derailed. Go ahead.
Well, before we get into what our listeners thought